Russian attack on the cities of Ukraine continues as the war enters day 44. Ukraine President Zelenskyy has now said the situation in town of Borodyanka is significantly more dreadful than in nearby Bucha. Although he did not give details about whether Russia was responsible for the situation, he said the work to clear the rubble is underway, after which the extent of the damage can be assessed. According to Bucha officials, over 300 people were killed by Russian forces in the city, and 50 were executed.
The work to clear the rubble in Borodyanka has begun. It's significantly more dreadful there. Even more victims from the Russian occupiers. And what will happen when the world learns the whole truth about what the Russian military did in Mariupol? There, on almost every street, is what the world saw in Bucha and other towns in the Kyiv region after the withdrawal of Russian troops. The same cruelty, the same terrible crimes.
Gaurav Sawant, tracking that story relentlessly, is now joining us from Kyiv for more on that. Gaurav, I'm going to talk to you about Kyiv in a bit from now, but first of all, one of your reports, you did suggest that you are traveling and there could be mines anywhere. This is something that all of you extremely wary about. Just give me an idea about what it has been like just to be on the streets, to travel and to report on this issue, and also the manner in which you have reported from both Bucha and Borodyanka, where the damage is still being assessed.
Sneha, it is extremely difficult even for healthcare workers or emergency workers or even the army to get to some of these areas, because the roads are littered with anti-tank and anti-personnel mines, and the fear is that if your vehicle accidentally goes on top of an anti-tank mine and it blasts off, so imagine if it can destroy a tank, what can it do to a vehicle? So it's very difficult to negotiate through that area. So while we've been doing that for several days, when safe lanes are declared, the road to Borodyanka does not even have a safe lane till date. Part of the bridge has also been blown up. Part of the road there has been blown up. That is why a track has been carved out of the forest, cutting trees or going through the forest, going through the Kacha Rasta, if I may, to get to Borodyanka. And that's exactly how, whether it's ambulances or emergency vehicles or even restoration vehicles are getting there. And it's a race against time, getting those heavy cranes into Borodyanka to be able to remove the rubble and pull people out of the rubble. Well, yesterday they managed to pull out about 15 bodies. There was some hope that people will be found alive. Unfortunately, no one was found alive, is what emergency workers told us. Only bodies were removed. And President Zelenskyy of Ukraine says that the damage in Borodyanka appears to be worse than Bucha, worse than what was happening in Irpin and Hostomel. When India Today visited Borodyanka, most of the houses on the high street, most of the buildings on the high street had been completely decimated in air to ground bombing and also missile and rocket and tank attacks. We were told that the Russian army wanted to take control of Hostomel. While they did for some time, they had to pull back, and it was Borodyanka that was set up as a tactical headquarters. So there was very fierce fighting from both sides, from the Russians and the Ukrainians. One to take control of that area and the other to retake that territory. And that is why in this intense fighting, it's the civilians who were caught in the crossfire and bore the brunt of the massive rockets, missiles, and tank weapons that were used here for almost a month plus. Sneha.
You know, Gaurav, it's going to be extremely, call me stupid if you may, but I still want to ask you, when does this end really, given that talks have been going on as well? Russia has faced the worst kind of economic sanctions. It's relentless. Russia is relentless in its attacks against Ukraine. It's also intensified. They're going, all out against civilians, going to residential buildings, going to hospitals, going to schools, killing children. Where does this end really? What about the conversations that Ukraine and Russia were having? What really is the way out? Russia has been, in fact, is out of the United Nations Human Rights Council now. Nothing seems to be stopping Russia.
So, Sneha, this actually appears to be intensifying and there is no end in sight. Just a short while back, there were a series of missile attacks that took place close to Mykolaiv and in Mykolaiv. So, towards the south and the east, the war is only intensifying, and the Americans and NATO countries are providing more military hardware to Ukraine to continue this fight. Russia on its side is also intensifying its operations. In fact, it's likely to intensify according to American and NATO intelligence in the coming week, where Russia reorganizes itself and targets the east and the south, and Ukraine incidentally is being armed to the teeth. So information that India Today has been able to glean from the Defense Ministry and other officials here is that they are getting about 1,500 surface-to-air Stinger missiles, 5,000 Javelin anti-tank guided missiles, 45,000 pieces of body armor, bulletproof jackets and helmets, close to 50 million rounds of small arms ammunition and larger ammunition, assorted ammunition, plus laser guided rockets. So there is a lot of weapons and systems that are coming this way. But President Zelenskyy is actually asking for fighter jets and tanks and missiles that can fire into the sea from ground, because they've sunk a Russian frigate, or they've damaged a Russian frigate which is actually limping back towards Russia, the Black Sea Fleet. So the damage from both sides is intense. No one's backing down, and this in a way appears to be a fight now between America and Russia, with Ukraine being a pawn in a bigger game.
Well, absolutely. That was clear from the very beginning. But also, Gaurav, you did mention the kind of military assistance that Ukraine essentially has been receiving. Talk to us a little about the countries that are extending this sort of help to Ukraine essentially. Gaurav, I was asking you about the countries that are extending this military assistance to Ukraine. Which are the European countries that are doing so?
So, Sneha, if I was able to hear you correctly, the kind of weapons and systems that Ukraine is getting, Australia is giving the Bushmaster armored fighting vehicles, United Kingdom is giving the Jackal armored fighting vehicles, the Czech Republic is giving T-72 tanks and BMP-1. So they're getting both tracked and wheeled AFV or armored fighting vehicles or infantry combat vehicles. That's one part of the story. They're getting surface-to-air missiles, the Stingers from the United States of America. They're getting the Switchblade radar, the drones from the Americans, and 100 pieces of Switchblades as part of $800 million aid that's coming to Ukraine, military aid that's coming to Ukraine. In fact, the US government is saying for every one Russian tank, there will be 10 anti-tank guided missile systems that Ukraine will have, and this is in a way to ensure that Russia is not able to make inroads further deeper into the Donbass region, because that is where this fighting is likely to intensify towards the south and the east. But air raid sirens even go off towards the north and even in the capital Kyiv. So the entire country is, one, on edge, two, preparing to fight back and preparing to fight the next round of this battle, Sneha.
All right. Gaurav, thank you so much for joining us and getting us all of those details. Gaurav Sawant putting that so well in perspective for all of us, just watching the situation from right here from our studios in Noida. It's horrific to see the kind of reports that Gaurav is sending. Gaurav and Lalit taking a risk and sending us all of those details and the ground reports to get you the actual picture of what really is happening in Ukraine. Gaurav, thank you so much. Be safe.